Hello, my name is Dr. Harold Benson. I have been working with men over 40 for many years. When I was 30, I also thought a glass of wine in the evening was a small thing, that a couple of beers with friends was a way to relax, release tension, and relieve fatigue after a week of work. And I wasn't wrong back then. The body's young, the liver is coping, hormones are raging, the heart is beating strongly, sleep is sound, all is forgiven. But as we approach 40, something happens that we often don't notice. The body changes the rules of the game. We're still the same on the outside, the same sense of humor, the same habit of relaxing a bit in the evening. But inside, our metabolism, blood vessels, and hormone levels are no longer the same. Our bodies begin to function differently. What once went away without a trace now manifests itself in a different way. Fatigue, insomnia, a heavy head, morning apathy, irritability, and excess weight that doesn't go away as before. I see this often in my patients. They come in for an appointment and say, "Doctor, I don't drink much, just on Fridays, sometimes a glass of wine in the evening." And each of them is surprised when we start going over their tests and see how this glass gradually changes how their entire body functions. Not right away, not in a month, but year after year, almost imperceptibly. Men over 40 rarely want to listen to lectures about the dangers of alcohol. We're not teenagers. We understand everything. And often we even know it's harmful, but we don't realize how important it is right now. After all, it seems like I haven't become a drunk. I'm not lying under a fence. I'm not losing my job. And anyway, after a hard day, I deserve a little rest. And herein lies the trap. Because after 40, alcohol ceases to be simply a relaxation aid. It becomes an aging accelerator. This isn't just a catchphrase, it's physiological. The body, which is already beginning to conserve resources, is forced to expend them on processing ethanol, regenerating liver cells, reducing inflammation, regulating blood sugar levels, and restoring hormone balance. And if this happens every week, the body simply doesn't have time to recover. I see this especially clearly when men stop drinking for at least a month. Their eyes clear up, their skin becomes smoother, their blood pressure drops, and their anxiety disappears. They're surprised themselves. It's as if someone has lifted a veil from their heads. And it's not because they've embarked on the path of righteousness. It's simply that their body can breathe freely for the first time in a long time. Men rarely admit to weakness. We can talk about back pain, blood pressure, prostate problems, anything. But we almost never say, "I can't bear it without this glass." Because alcohol has long been a part of not just relaxation, but a way to cope with fatigue. But fatigue isn't the enemy. It's a signal that the body and mind require not wine, but restoration. Sleep, movement, rest, silence, new sensations. I'm not a moralist. I won't say, "Don't drink at all." But I will be honest. After 40, any dose of alcohol is perceived differently. The body no longer forgives. While a glass of wine at 30 simply relaxes, at 45 it disrupts liver function and lowers testosterone. While beer once seemed harmless, now it accelerates fat gain and reduces insulin sensitivity. While you used to get a good night's sleep after an evening of whiskey, now you wake up at 3 in the morning with a dry mouth and a heavy head. Age doesn't make us weak. It makes us more vulnerable to habits that were once harmless. And if you want to remain a strong man, clear, focused, energetic, you need to be honest with yourself. Ask yourself not, "Why am I drinking?" but "What in me demands this glass?" Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's chronic fatigue. Maybe it's anxiety we don't even voice to those closest to us. Maybe it's simply a habit from our youth, a symbol of relaxation that no longer exists. And if you find the real cause, the craving goes away on its own. Because instead of relaxing through alcohol, you begin to live in a way that doesn't require relaxation. I often tell my patients, alcohol doesn't make us bad. It simply shows where we've lost touch with ourselves. And we can regain that connection, not through prohibitions, but through awareness. Today I want to talk about this calmly and like a man. No morals, no slogans. I'll simply explain what happens in a man's body after 40 when alcohol appears even in moderate doses. What changes in hormones, the brain, and the heart? Why one glass of alcohol in the evening can affect energy, motivation, libido, and confidence. If you feel that with each passing year it becomes harder to wake up in the morning, that your mental clarity is fading, that irritability is appearing, that sports are no longer bringing the same results, perhaps it is not a matter of age, but rather that your body is fighting a poison called a little wine every evening. When we talk about alcohol, we most often think of the liver, but if it were limited to the liver, I'd probably be calmer. The problem is that alcohol affects literally everything, from the brain to hormones, from blood vessels to mood. It doesn't just stress the body, it changes the way it functions. After 40, our brain becomes especially sensitive to disruptions in sleep, blood sugar, and oxygen levels. Alcohol, even in moderate doses, interferes with all three processes. When you drink, your brain receives a surge of dopamine, the pleasure hormone. At that moment, you feel lighter, more relaxed, as if anxiety were fading. But after a few hours, dopamine levels drop below baseline, and your brain demands a repeat. This is the first stage of hidden addiction, psychological compensation. The brain learns to derive pleasure not from relaxation, not from sports, not from social interaction, but from ethanol. And the older you get, the faster this addiction develops, because the brain loses flexibility and stressors increase. Many men notice that after 40, I don't drink much, but it's hard to relax without a glass in the evening. It's no longer a question of dosage. It's a question of replacing natural sources of joy. You stop enjoying real life. Your body craves external stimulation. This means without alcohol, you experience fatigue, irritation, and apathy. After 40, a man's metabolism slows by approximately 10–15%. The body no longer expends the energy at the same rate. Muscles lose some insulin sensitivity, and fat begins to accumulate more easily. Now add ethanol to this. Alcohol is a preferred fuel. While it's in the blood, the body stops burning fat and metabolizing protein. This means that everything you consume along with alcohol is stored. Therefore, a man who drinks even 2 to 3 times a week gradually loses muscle mass and gains fat, especially in the abdominal area. Beer is the worst option in this regard. Not only is it high in calories, but it also contains phytoestrogens, substances that lower testosterone levels. Essentially, regular beer consumption makes the body biochemically closer to a female metabolic type. Fat begins to accumulate in the stomach, thighs, and breasts. Testosterone drops, libido declines, and irritability and drowsiness appear. Many people think a little wine is good for the heart. This is a myth that grew out of inaccurate statistical observations from the 1980s. Yes, wine contains a small amount of antioxidants, but you can get the same effect from a handful of grapes without the ethanol, which destroys heart cells. After 40, blood vessels become less elastic. Alcohol causes vasodilation and then spasm. These constant fluctuations lead to microdamage to the walls and increased pressure. While the body used to compensate easily, now every drink and fall asleep leaves a mark. Morning headaches, tinnitus, and blood pressure surges aren't just a hangover. They're mechanical damage to the vascular network. And the older a man gets, the less able the body is to recover. Testosterone is a man's main ally after 40. It's responsible not only for libido, but also for mood, energy, motivation, post-workout recovery, and concentration. And it's the first hormone to suffer from alcohol. Ethanol affects 3 levels. The brain reduces the production of gonadotropins, which trigger the process of testosterone formation. Liver disrupts hormone metabolism, increasing the amount of estrogen. Leydig cells in the testicles damages their membranes and makes them less sensitive to brain signals. As a result, even small doses of alcohol gradually reduce total and free testosterone. A man becomes lethargic, apathetic, loses interest in life, has difficulty concentrating, and has difficulty recovering from exercise. And what's especially insidious is that he often doesn't attribute these changes to alcohol. He might blame it on just being tired, getting older, or too much work. But biochemistry is always accurate. The more often you drink, the weaker your hormonal profile. Many men believe that alcohol helps them fall asleep. Yes, ethanol does speed up falling asleep, but it disrupts sleep structure. After drinking, the body practically misses out on the deep sleep phases during which the brain and hormones are restored. Therefore, even if you slept 8 hours after drinking wine, your brain feels as if it didn't rest at all. Sleep after drinking alcohol is shallow and fragmented. Waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning, dry mouth, and anxiety are all consequences of a neurotransmitter imbalance. Chronic sleep deprivation further reduces testosterone levels, increasing cravings for sugar and alcohol, creating a vicious cycle of fatigue. There's another side to alcohol that men rarely talk about. Alcohol is a way to not feel, not think, not live. Family problems, work fatigue, guilt, fear of aging, all of this temporarily dissolves in a couple of glasses. But along with the pain, so does the strength. After 40, a man is especially vulnerable. Children are growing, his career demands more and more, his body is no longer young, and there's no time for himself. Alcohol becomes the pause button. But the more you press it, the harder it is to press start. Because energy drains not only from the body, it drains from the spirit. I often see men who quit drinking not because they have to, but because they suddenly realize they're losing their clarity. They lose the urge to act. They become indifferent to what used to inspire them. And when the alcohol disappears, they seem to return to themselves. Their eyes regain focus. Their voice regains confidence. Their gait gains strength. First, don't blame yourself. You're not sick or weak. You're simply living in a body that has changed, and now it needs a different attitude. You don't have to quit drinking on Monday forever. Start with honesty. How much do you actually drink? How often? In what situations? Try at least 30 days without alcohol. This isn't a punishment. It's an experiment. Observe yourself. How does your sleep, mood, physical strength, and mental clarity change? If you feel irritated or bored without alcohol, it's not just a habit, but an addiction to relaxation. And this is a great opportunity to learn to relax differently through exercise, breathing, walking, talking, music, silence. Through life, not through the chemical illusion of peace. After 40, alcohol stops being fun. It becomes a fatigue accelerator. It steals energy, sleep, hormones, clarity, and confidence. Not right away. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. But that's precisely why it's dangerous, because you don't feel like you're losing yourself. A strong man isn't someone who can drink too much. He's someone who can be honest with himself. Someone who can say, I choose myself, my energy, my clarity, my life. Sometimes men say to me, Doctor, but I'm not an alcoholic. I just like to relax. And I always answer, of course. But the question isn't who you are. The question is, why do you need it? You see, as we age, we begin to notice a different kind of fatigue creeping in. It's not the same fatigue you feel after a hard workout or a long day. It's an internal fatigue, when you seem to have everything family, work, home, experience, but you feel less joy. And at that point, alcohol becomes less of a drink and more of a bridge between you and yourself. It seems to help, but it does so in a false way. It takes away clarity, deprives you of your support, and distances you from real life. After 40, men are especially sensitive to such bridges. We're used to taking a hit, being strong, making decisions, providing and not complaining. But inside, pressure builds. Sometimes it's unexpressed anger, sometimes quiet anxiety, sometimes emptiness. And if you don't learn to face these feelings honestly without excuses, then alcohol becomes the easiest way to avoid feeling. I'm not saying quit drinking. I'm saying start listening to yourself. Understand what exactly you're drowning in with that glass. Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's a lack of fulfillment. Maybe it's fatigue from constant responsibility. Or maybe it's simply the habit of living on autopilot. When a man stops hiding behind alcohol, he unexpectedly regains more than just his health. He regains a sense of control, the ability to wake up in the morning and know that the day belongs to you, not to last night's drink. The ability to be a father, a partner, a leader, without losing self-respect. The ability to look in the mirror and see vibrant eyes, not dull ones from fatigue. We often confuse relaxation with switching off. True relaxation isn't when you stop feeling. It's when you feel calm, When your body breathes evenly, your thoughts don't race, your heart doesn't pound with anxiety. When you can simply sit in silence, without the TV, without the phone, without a drink and not run from yourself. Alcohol gives the illusion of peace, but it never provides true peace. True peace is inner strength. It comes when a man learns to be in the moment, not to fear his emotions, and not to seek an outlet for them in a bottle. Many men think strength means enduring, not breaking, not showing weakness. But in adulthood, strength is honesty. Saying, I'm tired, I want something different. I choose health, clarity, and self-respect. That's not weakness, it's awareness. When a man over 40 realizes that his body is not an enemy, but an ally, everything changes. He stops fighting himself. He begins to care not out of fear, but out of respect. He doesn't refuse a glass because he can't. He simply doesn't want to lose himself anymore. I've seen hundreds of men come to me tired, with bags under their eyes, insomnia, and irritation. And I've seen them transform after abstaining from alcohol for a month. Their skin brightened, their eyes became more alert, their thoughts clear, their voices confident. They gained energy, motivation, and a zest for life. They didn't become saints. They simply remembered who they were before their addiction. If you've decided to cut down or give up alcohol, start small. Don't look for a substitute. Don't try to fill the void. Just allow your body to recover. Drink more water, get enough sleep, walk, at least 20-30 minutes a day. Spend time in the sun, add some physical activity, even light. The body begins to recover surprisingly quickly. In 2 weeks, you'll feel lighter. In a month, your head will be clear. In 2 months, you'll have a stable mood and energy that doesn't need to be boosted by drinks. And most importantly, you'll gain self-respect. That quiet feeling of inner pride that can't be bought or drunk. Maturity isn't about being able to do everything. It's about knowing you no longer need to be able to do everything. You don't need to be the funniest one in the room. You don't need to prove your strength with a glass. You don't need to numb your pain. A mature man chooses mindfulness. He knows the body is not the enemy. Age is not a death sentence. Life is not a race. He chooses not a reaction, but a direction. He understands that strength lies not in running away from one's emotions, but in living through them and remaining oneself. Sometimes this journey begins with giving up alcohol, with a small step that seems insignificant, but changes everything. Because it's at that moment that you say to the world, I'm not afraid to be sober. I'm not afraid to be myself. I'm not afraid to feel. If you're listening to this right now and feel something resonating within, then you've already begun your journey. It doesn't matter whether you drink often or rarely, a lot or a little. One thing matters, you've started thinking. And that's the first step towards strength that doesn't require external support. A man doesn't become weak after 40, he becomes honest. He learns to choose what makes him stronger. He learns to rest without self-destruction, to love without pretense, to live without self-deception. And you know, life without alcohol doesn't become boring. It becomes real. You begin to taste the morning air, the joy of an ordinary day, the warmth of communication, the strength of the very fact of being alive. You don't run away from life, you meet it face to face. And this is the most mature form of masculine power. Not flashy, not ostentatious, not heroic, quiet, conscious, one that doesn't need a glass to feel alive.